All right, so today we're going to be diving into uh, a story that I know you've been following pretty
Yeah.
closely. Stephen King back on X,
Yeah.
and not just back like he came back with some opinions
Oh, yeah.
about Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and you sent over a whole bunch of articles
Yeah.
that cover this whole thing. So, pretty strong opinions there. So
For sure.
we're going to unpack, kind of what's going on here, what pushed him back to the platform. He kind of swore it off before.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and what does this tell us about like how much influence
Mm.
these tech giants or even people like Stephen King have on everyone else?
I mean, it's pretty fascinating, right? Because if we go back, it was only like a little over a year ago, like November 2024, he was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Like, he said it was toxic, especially after, Trump got reelected. And he even like told his followers to go find him on Threads instead.
And it wasn't just like he was dipping his toes in the water. The Variety piece mentions like he was pretty active on Bluesky during his X hiatus. So
Oh, really?
yeah, so it seemed like it was like a genuine attempt to like find a different space.
Ah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So that makes his return even more like, what's going on here? Like, did he just find those other platforms weren't doing it for him, or was it just the pull of X?
Ah.
Even with all the drama and the messiness, it's like it just kind of sucks you back in.
Yeah, especially, I mean, think about it. Trump's second term, Musk, at the DOGE,
Yeah.
like, he clearly was not thrilled about any of that.
Oh no.
And he didn't come back quietly.
Oh no.
The Fox News piece really highlighted like the intensity of his language. He called Trump a traitorous, Putin-loving dipshit, which,
Oh.
not something you see every day, especially from like, a literary icon like Stephen King.
Right. That's some strong language.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely not subtle, but, even though that grabbed everyone's attention, it's important to look at, like, where this is all coming from, right?
Yeah.
I mean, King's Bluesky posts, which Variety mentioned, kind of show he's been building up to this. He's been publicly criticizing Trump about the war in Ukraine, even calling Trump out for calling Zelensky a dictator.
Yeah, so this wasn't just like out of the blue, like he just woke up
No.
and decided to rant.
Yeah.
Like this was calculated. He knew this was going to get a reaction.
Definitely.
And of course, it doesn't stop there. He goes on to say, goes double for Elon. So Musk not escaping his wrath either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets like really interesting because, Musk, he's head of DOGE under Trump. So he is like, really deep in this administration.
Yeah.
And King, in that same Bluesky post, does not hold back. He's accusing both Trump and Musk of like basically ignoring the Constitution, which is, I mean, that's a huge statement.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, like, where's the line between just commenting on politics and, straight up attacking people, especially on a platform like X?
Right. And we can't forget, like, his criticisms go beyond like just the national level.
Right.
The Deadline piece highlights, how he was supporting Maine's governor, Janet Mills, specifically for her opposition to Trump's stance on transgender athletes, which shows like his engagement is on all these different levels.
Yeah.
And he's very much willing to use his platform to voice those opinions.
And what a platform it is, right? I mean, Variety mentioned that his return post got over 100,000 likes in just 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's a massive reach. And it just shows the power that these figures like King have,
Right.
especially in this world where everything's digital and online.
Right.
But the question is, does that power actually translate into real world change? Does it actually change people's minds or actions? Like, that's what we really need to unpack here.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the drama of it all, like these back and forths online. But the real question is, what does it mean for the average person? Like the person just scrolling through their feed.
Right.
How does this kind of public fighting between, powerful figures shape how we understand, how we engage with like the actual world around us?
Yeah, that's the key thing here, right? Because even though King is this, celebrity, his frustrations with how things are, his concerns about the toxicity online, his, willingness to call out people in power, that's something a lot of people feel.
For sure.
And that's where we need to go deeper. Like, does King's return mean something shifting in social media? Are we going to see more people coming back to these platforms even though they have all these problems? And what does that mean for how we talk about politics online in the future? It's like, it's really striking how King's whole journey back to X is kind of like this bigger thing we're seeing online, where it's like people leave, they get frustrated with like the negativity or, the algorithms and all that.
Yeah.
But then they often come back. You know, it's almost like this weird pull, even when we know it's not always the best for us.
It really is. It's like a love-hate relationship with all these platforms.
Totally.
We see the bad stuff, the toxicity, those echo chambers, but then we're like, but I can connect with people here. I can share information,
Right.
I can have debates, even if they get a little,
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of at the heart of what makes this whole thing so interesting, you know. King is like this, like he represents that back and forth that so many of us feel about social media. Like
Yeah.
he gets the potential for harm, but he's still drawn back in.
And it's not just him. It's like, think about how many people have said, I'm done with X, or Facebook's the worst, or, Instagram's just too much.
Yeah.
And then they're like, right back in.
Yeah.
And it's like, almost like,
It's like a digital addiction.
it's like a digital addiction. Like you
Yeah.
have to stay connected. You have to be part of the conversation, even if it's like a mess.
It's real, and researchers are like studying this stuff, and part of it is those algorithms they use, right?
Mhm.
They're designed to like keep us scrolling, to feed us the stuff we already believe, even if it's wrong or like actually harmful. And that's how those echo chambers get created, where you're only seeing what confirms what you already think. And it's like, how do you even talk to anyone with a different viewpoint?
And it's not just the algorithms, right? There's that FOMO, that fear of missing out.
Oh, for sure.
Like you see everyone talking about something, you're like, I gotta weigh in, gotta share my take.
Right.
Even if you haven't like really thought it through.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's like we're constantly being bombarded with information, and it can be overwhelming, and
Yeah.
so it's easy to just react without like actually thinking things through.
Yeah.
You know, just fire off a quick tweet or comment.
And that's where it gets dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Because when we're just reacting emotionally without really thinking critically, that's when we're like most vulnerable to being manipulated,
Right.
to misinformation, to propaganda. And that has consequences not just online, but in our like actual lives.
Totally. Like, look at how conspiracy theories spread, how polarized everything's gotten, how people don't trust institutions anymore.
Yeah.
Social media has played a role in all of that, for better or worse.
So like, where do we go from here? How do we like have these online conversations, but in a way that's productive,
Right.
that actually helps us understand each other, not just divide us more? Like, how do we use this to make sense of the world, not just make it more confusing?
That's a tough one, and there's not like a simple answer, but I think it starts with being aware,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
realizing that these platforms are built to keep us hooked, to trigger our emotions, to play into our biases. And once we get that, then we can start to be more critical of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Seek out different perspectives, try to have conversations, even with people we disagree with, but do it respectfully.
It's like taking a step back,
Yeah.
like take a breath and be like, okay, wait, what am I really seeing here? What are the motivations? What are the biases at play?
And being open to changing your mind,
Yeah.
Like admitting when you're wrong, realizing that none of us have all the answers.
Yeah, because learning is like a lifelong thing,
Yep.
right? And especially now when there's just so much information all the time.
Totally. And that's actually where I think people like Stephen King can be really valuable. They can use their platforms to start these conversations, to make us think critically,
Yeah.
to question things, to be more open to different views.
Even if those views are like, expressed in a way that maybe some people find a little harsh.
Even then. Because sometimes you need like a really strong voice, a statement that kind of shakes things up to wake people up a little.
And King definitely isn't afraid to be provocative.
No, not at all.
But, let's maybe shift gears a bit and focus on like the specifics of what he's saying about Trump and Musk.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, like when he accuses Trump of, treason, that's a loaded word. Can you unpack that a bit? What's he actually saying there?
Well, treason, it gets thrown around a lot, but legally it has a really specific meaning, right? It's
Like-
about actions that like betray your country, like helping an enemy.
So is King saying that Trump like legally committed treason?
I don't think he's making a legal argument.
Okay.
I think he's using treason more as like, a metaphor to express this feeling of betrayal, of anger at what he sees as Trump siding with Russia.
So you mentioned earlier, like those Blue Ski posts, how King was criticizing Trump on the Ukraine war.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he's talking about here?
I think it's part of it, but I think it goes deeper,
Okay.
Back to those allegations about Trump and Russia being in cahoots during the 2024 election.
Yeah.
The whole idea that Trump owes something to Putin.
But those allegations were never proven, right?
True, but the idea that they're like buddies has stuck around,
Yeah.
fueled by, Trump's own words, his actions, praising Putin, not really criticizing the Russian aggression, trying to weaken NATO. Like, all that stuff just makes people uneasy, and I think King's one of them.
And then you have Musk heading DOGE under Trump.
Yeah.
And King seems to see that as, like, a betrayal, too.
Yeah.
But why? What's he so critical of Musk for?
I think it comes down to, like, disillusionment, A lot of people, especially in tech, saw Musk as this visionary, someone pushing things forward, and then he aligns with Trump, who, to many, is like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So it felt like a betrayal of those ideals.
Like he sold out, gave up his principles for, like, power and closeness to the establishment.
Exactly. And it's worse because now Musk is using all his money and influence to support Trump's agenda,
Right.
an agenda that King and others see as really harmful.
So it's not just about politics.
No.
It's deeper. It's about values, about betrayal.
Right. Well,
And a fear that the people in power are just, like, using their positions for themselves, not for everyone else.
that's it. And that resonates with a lot of people, regardless of their politics.
Yeah.
It's about trust eroding, feeling like the system's rigged, that the leaders aren't accountable to the people they're supposed to represent.
And that feeling, that disillusionment, that distrust, that's, like, corrosive to democracy, right?
Totally.
When people don't believe in the system anymore, they don't participate, they don't vote,
Right.
they just check out.
It's a vicious cycle. Apathy and cynicism just become like self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
And that's why King's voice matters. He's not afraid to speak up, to call out those he sees as abusing their power, to challenge the way things are, even if it makes him unpopular or, makes enemies.
It's a reminder that we all have a role in holding the powerful accountable.
Absolutely.
We can't just sit back, We have to use our voices, our votes, our choices as consumers
Right.
to demand better.
And that's where this whole conversation about King, social media, and the future of American politics gets really interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just about the drama and the insults. It's about bigger questions of power, accountability, and what it means to be a citizen in a democracy.
And it's about the responsibility we all have to be informed, to be engaged, and to actively shape the world we want to live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that's a perfect lead-in to our next point, which is the impact of all this on everyday users like yourself.
Yeah.
Because while King might have this huge platform, a really powerful voice, what he's saying is something a lot of people feel.
You're right. This isn't just about celebrities and politicians.
Yeah.
It's about how these dynamics, these power struggles, these online battles, like, trickle down and affect how we think, how we feel, how we treat each other.
Like, imagine you're just, scrolling through X and
Yeah.
you see Stephen King, this huge literary figure, like, just totally slamming Trump and Musk.
Yeah.
It makes you stop and think.
Right.
Like, maybe it makes you feel like, yeah, I feel that too.
Right.
Or maybe it challenges your views.
Yeah.
But either way, it, like, sparks something.
It does. It's like he's putting words to this, like, anxiety that a lot of people have.
Right.
But maybe they haven't, like, really thought about it or said it out loud.
Yeah.
This feeling that, like, things are messed up, the people in charge aren't, like, playing by the rules.
Exactly. And whether or not you agree with, like, every single thing King says.
Right.
Seeing someone like him with all his, fame and influence going up against these powerful people,
Yeah.
it can be really empowering. Like, it reminds you that you're not alone in feeling this way, and that even the people who seem untouchable can be held accountable.
But it's not just about King himself, is it? It's like there's this whole system at play here.
Right.
And these articles, they show how the way these social media platforms are built, it can actually make these voices louder.
Yeah.
And that shapes how we see the world.
It's true. Those algorithms, they're supposed to keep us engaged, but they can end up creating these echo chambers, right?
Yeah.
Where you're only seeing stuff that confirms what you already believe. It's like this loop.
Yeah.
It makes it hard to even consider other viewpoints.
And then you add in how fast everything moves online.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the moment and just react emotionally without really thinking things through.
It happens all the time, right?
Right.
A tweet goes viral, a hashtag is trending, and suddenly everyone's an expert on, like, really complex stuff.
Right.
But they might not really get all the details.
Uh-huh.
Misinformation just spreads so quickly, and feelings become more important than facts.
So, like, what do we do as, just regular people using these platforms?
Yeah.
How do we not get swept up in all the craziness and keep things in perspective?
I think it starts with realizing that we have choice. you know?
Okay.
We can choose to be more careful about what we read and believe.
Yeah.
We can look for different viewpoints, even ones we disagree with.
Right.
We can take a moment to think before we hit that share button.
Yeah, it's about realizing that we're not just passively taking in information.
Right.
We're actually shaping the online world by what we do.
Absolutely.
And that means we have a responsibility to be thoughtful, to think critically, to be engaged.
It's kind of like what we were talking about with King, right?
Uh-huh.
He's using his platform to challenge things, to get people talking, to hold those in power accountable. We might not have millions of followers, but we can still do that in our own circles, you know?
It's like having those tough conversations with your family and friends,
Right.
sharing articles you've actually read,
Yeah.
like fact-checked,
Yeah.
calling out misinformation when you see it, supporting organizations that are trying to teach people how to be better, like digital citizens.
It all adds up. Those
Yeah.
little things might seem small, but they make a difference. We all have a role to play in what the internet becomes.
It's a good reminder that this isn't just about, you know, Stephen King, Donald Trump, Elon Musk.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about all of us.
Yeah.
What kind of world we want to live in, you know?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing how much these platforms affect our lives and choosing to use them in a way that promotes, like, understanding, empathy, having real conversations.
Well said.
So yeah, the next time you're scrolling through your feed and you see something that's, like, trying to grab your attention, stop for a second.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Take a breath.
Ask yourself, what's the bigger story here?
Exactly.
What are the motivations? And, you know, most importantly, what role do I want to play in all of this? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, folks. It's been fascinating and, let's be honest, a little scary too.
Oh, a little bit.
Keep those minds sharp and keep those conversations going.